The Jabra Elite 7 Pro are flagship ANC earbuds that come in at £200 in the UK and $200 in the US, and in this detailed review we'll be seeing if it's actually worth its price tag, specifically in comparison to some of its major competitors. Now, the earbuds don't get off to a good start because they are limited to the SBC and AAC codecs only, whereas a lot of its competitors sport the aptX, aptX HD, or even the highest quality LDAC or HWA codecs. It's a real shame that Jabra hasn't incorporated these higher fidelity codecs because it would have improved on the overall audio fidelity that you can get over Bluetooth. Nevertheless, I was actually pretty taken back as to how good these earphones sound across the frequency range. The 6mm dynamic drivers do a stupendously good job. Now, let's break it down in terms of each frequency range. First off, in terms of the sub-bass tones, the Jabra Elite 7 Pro, very much like their predecessors, the Jabra Elite 85T or 75T, pronounce that low-end rumble, and therefore when you're listening to R&B or dance music or even watching movies, you're going to get a little bit of excitement and you're going to hear that low-end rumble, something that Sennheiser, for example, can't really claim in doing. Similarly, when it comes to the mid-bass, it's pretty punchy, and yes, you can EQ it, which I'll showcase very shortly, but in its real default configuration, the mid-bass tones are actually pretty perfect. The overall quantity and quality is pinpoint accurate, at least to my ears, and I had no problems whatsoever in this department. Now, as for the mids, I was yet again taken back by the overall sound reproduction throughout the frequency range. Now, they're not quite Sennheiser-esque, whereby they're not as forward sounding as their Sennheiser rivals, but in comparison to pretty much every other earphone out there in the market, they will come across in an excellent fashion. Take, for example, the Grado GT220s, the likes of the Jabra Elite 85T and 75T, the Oppo Enco X, the Anker Soundcore Liberty 3 Pros, and even the Libratone Track Air Plus or the Gen 2 variants of them. All of these earphones have got a much more pushed back and recessed V-shaped sound signature, and it's not the same thing that could be said about the Jabra earphones, which yet again really took me by surprise. Now, as for the highs, they're a little bit overzealous at the top end, at least in their standard configuration, but thankfully you can EQ that to your heart's content through the app, and again, I will talk about that very shortly. But what I would like to point out over here is that they do extend very well and give you all the nice cymbals and the top end clarity that you'll want and keep you kind of excited when you're listening to your music. So with this in mind, if you do not have sensitive ears, then I think that standard configuration will pretty much suffice. If however you're like me and you have a little bit more sensitive ears, then that slight EQ that you can take off the highs provides a pretty likable sound and one that doesn't give you any fatigue either. And so what about when it comes to its soundstage? Because fundamentally the Jabra earphones have got a much more smaller form factor in comparison to the likes of the Sennheiser, Grado or NuraTrue alternatives, and indeed its rivals do a better job in providing a more airy soundstage. However, that's not quite the entire picture, because when it comes to instrument separation, while all of these earphones do a fantastic job, in my opinion, the Jabras are the best in class, and that's coming from someone who's reviewed in excess of 70 different true wireless earbuds and over 500 audio-related devices. I was absolutely taken back by the instrument separation of the Jabra Elite 7 Pros, and it left me kind of jaw-dropped. I was able to enjoy my music in almost a different dimension, and not in an artificial sense, but one that really just got me to appreciate music all that bit more in a set of true wireless earbuds. Now, sound quality is seriously impressive, but what about when it comes to recording quality? Well, yet again here, Jabra have done a phenomenal job. I was very impressed with the Jabra Elite 75T, which I often use as a reference, and that progressed to the 85Ts, which did an even better job. And yet again here, very much like the 85T, the Elite 7 Pro do a great job of portraying my voice accurately and not sounding over bloated or kind of phased out towards the mid-range tones. Indeed, if you want fantastic call quality, the Jabra earphones, in my opinion, still reign supreme. Speaking about one of its predecessors here, the Jabra Elite 75T, which you'll be able to pick up, sounds very good on the whole, but does sound a little bit boomier towards the lower end tones, whereas the Elite 7 Pros portrayed a little bit more of a more well-rounded and balanced sound signature when it comes to recording. And just for comparison, here's one of the rival earphones that you can find out there in the market, and it's the Oppo Enco X. the earphones just don't do as well when it comes to recording quality. And of course, there are some other earphones out there, and I could continue this list of recording quality tests, but it just gives you an indication of how other earphones compare to the Jabra earphones, specifically the Elite 7 Pros. However, it's not all positive, because the Jabras fall short when it comes to active noise cancellation. And alas, over here, the Elite 7 Pros aren't anywhere near as good as its competitors, from the likes of One More to the likes of Sony or Nura, or let's say for example the Anker earphones, Oppo or Libratone. All these other earphones provide far superior ANC performance, and here unfortunately the Jabras fall short. So much so that if I were to compare even the Jabra Elite 75T, which are far cheaper earphones, and you combine the passive noise isolation and the active noise cancellation technology, you'd almost potentially choose the 75T over the likes of the Elite 7 Pro, at least to my ear canals. Here I just found that the Elite 7 Pros, while I had a fantastic fit and comfort with them, just again didn't provide the same sort of passive noise isolation as the slightly chunkier Elite 75Ts. In this domain, if we take passive noise isolation completely out of the department, here the overall active noise cancellation is pretty much on par with its much cheaper sibling, and therefore means that when you are comparing these earphones to class leading or even medium to high tier ANC earphones out there on market, the Jabra Elite 7 Pros really fall short. So I referenced the app quite a few times, so let's get into it. Now first off, at the top you can see the battery level from the case and the earphones themselves, and then you've got the active noise cancellation, which you can adjust in terms of a couple of increments, and the same could be said about the hear through mode. So yes, indeed, you've got a hear through mode if you want to use it, and of course if you don't want any of this, you can disable it. Now as for the music equalizer, you can see I've customized it where I've dropped the highs and the lows a little bit and increased the mids just that bit more for the more balanced soundstage. But of course that is completely subjective. You can completely customize that through the 5-band equalizer or go through one of the preset EQs. Now if you go through the settings cog here, you're going to reveal a lot more options. First off, if you go into headset settings, you've got the audio experience where you can enable music being played when you are running hear through mode. You can also have My Sound, and this is a customized hearing profile. In my case, I completely disabled that because I just didn't feel that it really bolstered the experience. And as for the call experience, you've then got, for example, the side tones, which you can enable and also adjust as well, which is again nice to see. So the customization is definitely there. And then you've got the headset configuration where you can enable how the sound modes behave. You've got sleep modes, headset feedback. So for example, when you're touching, let's say, the earbuds on the right hand side, it gives you an indication of to what setting you're running. And you've got in-ear detection. So in other words, it's a little sensor which mentions to see if you want it continuously playing when it's in your ears or when you take it out. Then you've also got a way of personalizing it. So for, as I said before, you've got different ways of customizing, for example, the active noise cancellation or in terms of the sound, and of course when it comes to controls. Now when it comes to controls, you can customize the left and right earbuds independently, which is nice to see, and you've got quite a lot of different options. So for example, single press, or you can press and hold as well. And then when it comes to the options, well, you've got a few options to select from, but the options in my opinion are pretty much what you would expect and will suffice for a lot of individuals out there. And furthermore, you can also customize it between calls in terms of active or incoming calls, and also in terms of media. So it's pretty smart in terms of recognizing that. Elsewhere, you can select your voice assistant, where it's got Amazon Alexa built in as well if you want to use that, and you can also check for firmware updates if you've got a latest firmware, and therefore when you want to add extra features to the earphones. Now with the app aside, I should also mention that when it comes to connectivity, the earphones can be used independently from each other and therefore can be used in a mono format. The switch is absolutely instantaneous, and here Jabra should be really commended for what they've done. I've also heard that they also will be supporting multi-point connection as well, which means that switching between devices should be a little bit more seamless. Now as for the earphones themselves, the overall color of them, I have no issues whatsoever. They're available in 3 separate finishes, and in this respect I find out pretty stylish. Now they've got a button found, a physical button should I say, found on each of the earbuds, and as I showed, you can customize customize it through the app. However, pressing the button does mean that you can hear it being clicked whilst it's in your ear canal, and therefore isn't as comfortable as the likes of touch sensitive earphones which are good in this department. Say for example, the likes of the Sennheiser True Wireless Momentum 2s or the Oppo Enco X. Here these earphones provide really good touch sensitive pads, and means that, well, it doesn't feel that you're kind of shoving the earbuds in your ears a little bit more when you are interacting with them. But of course that is pretty subjective. Now this perfectly leads me on to the overall form factor of the earphones. They're really slender in comparison to other audiophile grade earphones, and while they're not the likes of, let's say, the Oppo Enco X when it comes to their stem design, it does mean that when it comes to, in comparison to, let's say, the likes of the Sennheiser or Grado or NuraTrue alternatives, these earphones are far more comfortable. I wouldn't go as far as saying that you can sleep on them, but I will say that they're very comfortable, and I had no problems when it comes to doing light jogs either. They don't really fall out of my ears, but again, that is quite subjective and it really depends on your own ear canals. If you really want something for workouts, then you're really going to be looking for something with an over-ear design instead. Moving past that, we do also get onto battery life, and here the earphones have got an 8 hours charge, and which is pretty good, and with the case it extends up to 30 hours. The case also has wireless charging, and also it has a USB Type-C input which allows for fast charging, which is great to see. And finally, it's also worth bearing in mind that the earphones are dust and waterproof, where they're IP57 rated. And so this brings me on to my verdict. Will I recommend the Jabra Elite 7 Pros? Well, quite frankly, they do great across the board, whereby they offer a really nice comfortable design. They've also got a relatively small form factor, a bit from the earbuds themselves to the charging case. They've also got a good battery life, and they offer fantastic sound and recording qualities. However, they fall short in two departments, at least in my opinion, and that's when it comes to ANC performance and the overall Bluetooth codec support. However, it should be worth bearing in mind that the former here isn't that impressive in the likes of the Sennheiser or Grado alternatives either. They either don't offer ANC altogether and or have pretty poor ANC performance too. Then you've got the likes of the NuraTrues, which are an alternative that you might want to consider. However, if you're going to be taking calls or want to be using them on the go, then the call quality of the Nuras are, well, no match whatsoever with all the other earphones I've mentioned, specifically the Jabras. So here for me, personally, it's between three earphones, the Sennheiser and the Grados, and then the Jabras. If you're looking for a bassy sound and you want something that's quite airy, then you might want to look at the Grados. If you want something that's more mid-centric but a little bit bass-light and still airy in terms of its soundstage, then you might want to look at the Sennheisers. If, however, you want a little bit of both, but then don't have the same sort of airy nature, and then also want class-leading call quality, then you should pick the Jabras. And for that reason, they actually get my Best Buy award. So I'd be intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Would you buy these earphones over the rivals, specifically the ones I've just mentioned? Well, just let me know. I'm just curious to see what you would pick. Now, of course, if you like this independent, detailed and honest review, definitely do drop a like, and of course subscribe and hit that bell notification, all of which would be greatly appreciated. And you can even follow my shenanigans on social media, where I'm on Instagram and Twitter. Links will be down in the description below, including to all the earphones that I've referenced, including the reviews to each of these too. Now, I've been Totally Dubbed, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves, and goodbye.